Hey, good morning. This is Cyrus Williams. I've been asked to talk to you guys about a topic in multicultural for your CES class. I teach that same class at Regent University. My name is Dr. Cyrus R. Williams III. I am a professor at Regent University and the director of the PhD program at Regent University. I've been here for about 10 years. I am full professor. I just got word a couple of months ago that I am full professor. I've been here 10 years. I am a Florida Gator. I worked at University of Florida for 10 years in a different capacity. I was in student affairs. I assistant dean of students. I worked in all kinds of positions at University of Florida. As well as I worked at the University of Connecticut in student support services programs, McNair Scholars Program. So I've done it all in higher education. It is my joy to be with you today and to talk to you about multicultural supervision. I'm a strong believer that multicultural should be in every class. I'm a strong believer that multicultural is something that we need to bring up. It is our responsibility to bring up and to keep talking about and going through as we teach and we become CS professionals. Now, multicultural is a very difficult class to teach. I'm sure your teacher, your professor will talk to you about that. There are frustrations with multicultural. I love teaching about multicultural. It's tough in the class when people are not ready to be challenged and to talk about things. At Regent University, please Google me for more information about who I am and all that. I'm not interested in sharing that right now. I'm just interested in getting right into multicultural supervision because I think in supervision, in internship, in practicum, this is that next level of supervision, right? This is that you already have supervision in the master's program, not supervision, multicultural in the master's program. When you get into these practical classes like internship, group, and practicum, you can go that next level in terms of multicultural. So it's like an advanced multicultural class. I view internship as an advanced multicultural class when I'm in the master's program because I can talk about things because they finally, for real, have clients. So we can talk about the complexity of multicultural. We can talk about complexity of clients, the complexity of socioeconomic status and orientation, and we can talk about ethnicity and culture, but it's live and diagnosing. It's live now. We're going to take in consideration a lot of the socioeconomic privilege, ethnicity, status, immigration status can come up, language. And we're at Regent University, which is a faith-based Christian institution. So we're going to talk a little bit about faith and spirituality, and you should be talking about faith and spirituality too. Okay, let me calm down because I get excited talking about these topics. So I want to talk about what is multicultural supervision. And you guys know Goodyear, you should know Goodyear, but these other folks too. Multicultural supervision occurs when two or more culturally different persons with different ways of perceiving their social environment experience are brought together in a supervision relationship. So I'm not going to read all these slides for you, but I do want you to read them, and I will forward this over to your professor so you can have it and kind of refer back to it. So why multicultural supervision? Well, because that's what AMCD wants us to do. That's what ACA wants us to do. That's what AMCA wants us to do. That's what everybody wants us to do. And that's what the clients need to do. You're a CES professor. You need to teach your master's people to not run away from these topics, but run into these topics. The only way to run into these topics is that they are comfortable with themselves and competent with what is going on. They don't have to be experts, obviously, but competence. So multicultural supervisors are those people who are sensitive to cultural issues and attempt to separate supervisees from their cultural context. So what you're trying to do as a multicultural supervisor and imparting those things is to challenge your master student who's in front of you, to challenge them in terms of, what do you think about this in a culture, from a cultural lens? You are going to be doing that early. Don't forget the word early, and often. Don't forget the word often. Not one time, not halfway through, not when they bring up something. Early and often. Always bring it up. That is your job, to bring it up all the time. It is important for supervisors to communicate their willingness, right, to discuss cultural factors in the initial supervisory sessions, right? It is incumbent upon us, right? Incumbent upon us to bring the topic up. There's nothing worse than, I'm a black male, I'm an African-American male. So when they come into my office, I have to deal with all those dynamics, right? My supervisee, my intern, my resident. I have residents too. I have a private practice also. So they all come in there and they know who I am. So the question is, they concerned about bringing up stuff with me? Do they think maybe that I'm not going to be willing to, do they think I'm going to judge them, think they're racist and all that? You got to talk those things out with your supervisees. And in an internship class, in a group class, it is a wonderful time to have those real fleshed out conversations. I had an example. I had one of my supervisees about 7-8 years ago. She was talking about the struggle with these clients, these kids at her site. And we talked about it for 3-4 weeks. And I'm like, what in the world is your struggle? I don't understand it. And after a while, it got to the point where she told me that she is the only non-person of color at her entire site. She was a white woman, about 40 years old. And that was my fault, right? That's my bad. I should have talked to her early and often about it. And I know I talked about multicultural stuff, but she did not feel comfortable enough to say, I'm having a problem with all these primarily African-American kids, and I'm the only white person in the building, and it's 50, 75 in the after-school kind of mental health program. And that's on me. That's my problem that I need to fix. And I thought I was good at it, because I brought it up, but I was not good at it in terms of saying things like, so tell me specifically about your clients. Why you struggle there? What's their ethnicity? How do you couch this in their ethnicity? And then we would have got around to it. So I brought it up early, and I talked about it early, but I didn't talk about it often because she was not ready early. But I should have pushed her in terms of bringing it up often to her. So supervisors should, like I'm saying here, supervisors should raise the issue of race or culture as a first step toward establishing a constructive relationship, right? So be careful with that, because we'll do that. It's the same thing as when you're doing consent for your clients. We think we check that box off the first day, informed consent that first day, but informed consent should be talked about throughout your relationship, right? When I'm working with a sex offender, and I don't work with them often, but I had a 12-year-old sex offender, and I had to tell him early who I'm working for, who I'm not working for. I'm not a police officer, I'm not this, I'm that. However, I told him I have to report some things. So I have to be fair to him and say that often, because in 3, 6, 7 weeks, when he's much more comfortable with him, I have to remind him, be careful now. I gotta report some of this stuff if you are saying things that are against the law and you're touching somebody you shouldn't. So I given all these examples. I'm kind of around the place, but this is what I'm talking about: is staying vigilant about multicultural issues, talking about those issues, going through those issues, finding yourself a motto. And we're going to talk about the motto in a minute. Finding yourself a motto that will allow you to understand and to guide you, just like any other theory, that will um, guide you through multicultural supervision. So some of the barriers that are said here. Barriers, the supervisors may believe that the supervisees know more about multicultural issues than they do. So that's a barrier there. And if that's true, it's like anything else. Um, you have to be humble enough, vulnerable enough to live in that space, right? That space of they may know more than me about multicultural. So I need to be the learner in this situation, give up some authority and power and privilege, and really start sitting back and saying, okay, this my client can teach me a little something. My supervisee can teach me a little something. My intern can teach me a little something, but I have to be humble enough to receive it. So that is okay. When you're working with things like addictions and you don't know much about certain drugs and addiction cycle and those things, humble yourself enough to sit back and say, I'm going to learn from my client today, and I'm going to be a better counselor later because I've humbled myself and allowed that to happen. Okay. So sometimes supervisees, they avoid discussing multicultural issues due to their own insecurities. So you, as a CES professional, have to continue not to stop learning and to be this sage on the stage, right? You're going to have to continue to work out this. This class that you're in right now is going to help you, again, to work this thing out. Now, it's not going to be the same class in terms of you are talking about the client, you're talking about the supervisee, right? Or the intern or what have you. You're talking about supervising them. So it's a different little perspective, but it doesn't change your work. You still have to be competent in these areas. You still have to talk about your insecurities. You still have to get your supervision. So this is a perfect time to get supervision on these topics. It's not about guys knowing, the details of what an Asian person client needs and their worldview. And it's not about that, guys. You should have got a lot of that in the master's level. At this point, you're trying to figure out how your supervisee can be authentic in the session and vulnerable in the session, right? How they can be authentic, vulnerable, and competent in the session, not just understand somebody's worldview, because they can get that out of a book, and you know how that is not even that's not even half true, some of the stuff, because there's so many generalities and stereotypes. So I hate teaching that way, and I don't teach that way. However, there are still a lot of books that still kind of teach that way. Okay. The primary barrier preventing supervisors from adapting skills and behaviors associated with multicultural supervision is minimal training in multicultural supervision, right? Issues. So that's the primary barrier, is that the supervisee or the intern doesn't feel comfortable. The supervisor doesn't feel comfortable. So we just ignore the whole thing. So how do you continue after getting out of your master's program, going in your PhD program and having a multicultural class, and your class is different because you're talking about teaching a class and imparting those things with a master's student. How do you continue to grow and change? Well, you have to commit. You have to commit to growth and change. You have to do things like that you don't normally do. Like when you go to a conference, You should go. I know everybody goes to their area. They're like, oh, I love this and I love this and I love this. You need to be going to some workshops about things that you are not good at or not experienced at or insecure about. So when you go to a conference, you go to all the multicultural sessions. Okay, you get a good supervisor, you get a good mentor, you do those things to continue to grow in that area. And of course, you read, right? So you have to be the responsible for increasing your knowledge in this area. Even though you may not be teaching this class, that's not the point. The point is this multicultural competency should be throughout all classes. And certainly, like I said, I'm a big believer in these probe classes, skill classes that really should be talking about it, right? So lack of exposure to multicultural counseling education can cause supervisors to not feel confident in addressing multicultural issues. That's all right, guys. We just talked about it. That's all right. That means you need to get yourself moving. You need to get yourself working in those areas because, you know, we only have so many classes we can do, right? So you're going to get one in your master's class, official multicultural class, and one in a PhD class, official class. And they're all taught differently, right? Some of you guys might have been taught it was all about ethnicity. Some of you guys, I've heard of people talk. It's more about history than it is about people in society. And some of you guys are going to be more of a leadership, social justice advocacy area. Some of it's going to be much more based on populations, like it might be the LBG populations. So in some faith-based institutions, it might be just about spirituality and how that. So whatever your class is, there's going to be limitations based on your professor, right? Because the professor might come at this angle or that angle or this angle. You might like it or not like it, but it's not going to be comprehensive. It can't be. We're going to touch all kinds of places. So you have to continue to grow in these areas. So what do you want to do here? These are your choices, all right? Your choices are this. Number one, avoid addressing cultural differences, intentional or unintentional, right? That's your choice, number one. Number two, only address cultural differences when clients bring it up or come up in process, right? This is what most people do, right? They're like, I'll talk about it when they talk about it, and that's about it. And I'm going to get off the subject as soon as I can get off the subject. Number three, be proactive. Address cultural differences from the beginning and continue throughout, right? So that number three is kind of hitting the mark there. If you look at the screen here, that's hitting the mark, and that's the kind of multicultural supervisor you want to be. So the how is, right? Openly discuss one's own culture and how this impacts their beliefs and worldview. So talk about your own culture, explore cultural transference. I always have a problem saying that word, issues. Talk about that. Providing a safe environment, right, for racial and ethical identity development. Right before your eyes, guys. You need to continue to help people with their identity, ethnic identity, right, in the development. Right before your eyes, you can see a stage that people are in. You're like, wow, they're in that stage. Now, is that good or is that bad? What does the research say about this or that? That's the frustration with teaching the master's level classes, right? Is that people are in different stages and the resistance can get on your nerves and you can come unhinged if you really allow that to happen. So be careful. Be careful when you're doing this. Be safe. The most important thing you guys can do is to have a safe, have a real safe environment and be able to talk this through and get lots and lots of supervision. It's important for you to get lots and lots of supervision. Because it's hard to manage. in the classroom really hard, in supervision hard also. So get that help you need in order to manage these things. You guys have probably, or listeners have probably taken a master's class. There's going to be 2, 3, 4, 5 of you who had a bad experience in a multicultural class as a master's student. And I get it. I get it. You have to be careful not to bring that on with other people's, or be super sensitive, or be overly aggressive or overly passive, right? You need to get supervision. Okay, so I want to go into this vision model, right? You have to find out a model of multicultural supervision, and this is one that's put together that I use, and it's easy and it's kind of prescriptive, right? It's really prescriptive here. So whoops, as I move this thing around here, I'm trying to get it right. There we go. So as we move this thing around, so the most important thing is multicultural supervision. You need to have some kind of paradigm, right, of being culturally responsive for supervisors. And this is a nice little model. It's one of them. I know the people who put it together, know them all, know 2 of them pretty well, one of them very, very well. They're good people. They work very hard. They're involved in ACA. They are committed to this. And I need you guys to commit to a model, okay? And if you can't get a model, I want you to get kind of a perspective of what you're going to do. At the very least, you're going to be very conscious of it, right? At the very least, you're going to be very conscious. Your professor will go through some of the other parts of this. My job today is just to get you to kind of think some things through. I got some homework for you to do. So this homework is going to be fun for you to kind of listen and read and work out and then discuss. Please, folks, do not, talk for real talk, right? It's okay to real talk with your professor, and trust your colleagues. And I hope your professor can handle that. I know they can handle it, but a word we use in our faith-based program is grace, right? If somebody fumbles over a word, man, instead of attacking them, grace, man. They made a mistake. Give them a break. Give them another chance, right? So give them a little bit of grace. This happens in these classes. If people are going to be honest, they're going to fumble over some words. They're going to say some things wrong, right? That's okay. It's okay not to jump on them. It's okay to say, okay, I don't agree with them, or maybe they messed up a word, or give them another chance or something like that. So that's what you want to do in supervision. That's what you want to do in teaching. And that's what you want to do in this class. Extend some grace to your professor as well as to your peers. So the supervision, VISION model here. It talks about how to kind of organize yourself. So structure, you want to know people's values and belief systems. So your job is to talk about people's values and beliefs. So in your supervision opportunities, talk about how people see the world, right? How people see the world and what their values and systems and belief systems are. You need to talk about that because it's important in terms of your relationship with them. And then respond to internal and external stimuli, right? You want to talk about interpreting their experience in describing meaning. So you want them to interpret those values and beliefs, and then you really want them to be able to share their experiences. So it's not enough to talk about values and beliefs. Now you have to talk about interpretations, because the truth of the matter is we generally all have the same values and beliefs, but interpretation and meanings are different, very different. Getting a higher, getting a degree, a college degree, may be of value in everybody's kind of culture. But what's different about it is, where does it come from? Does it come from you need to get higher education because everybody else has got a higher education and we have a job for you to do this, and you can take over the business? That's very different than the people I worked at the University of Connecticut and the University of Florida. I work with these low-income first-generation college students at both of these schools, the Student Support Services Program and the McNair Scholars Program. Now, they have values for higher education too, right? And it was a high value, but it's very different for them because by them leaving the community and going to school, not only is that a foreign kind of thing for them because no one else has done it, they have no models, but the other part is there is pressure because they are taking themselves out of the community, which means taking money out of the community, opportunities for the family out of the community. So going to college for them is very different because although their parents want them to go to college, there is an unwritten rule that you still got to kind of take care of your little sister. You still got to, when you get your financial aid check, you need to chip me off a little bit and send me a little something, right? So that's a whole different idea of higher education that is in somebody's mind that is different than someone else. So how they interpret these feelings and meanings and experiences is very important for you to talk about. So structure, right? Structure according to the personal cultural meanings and preferences. So talk about that. These all can be one aspect of when you get into supervision, for you guys who do this all the time, when you get into supervision, you are going over case studies and you're going over things like that. But every week, every time you kind of go through this vision, you kind of break out all of this stuff. Okay. The I is interactional style of verbal and nonverbal communication. So you want to talk to them about the verbal and nonverbal communication in their own personal world. Now, we're not talking about this from a client's perspective. You're talking about this from their perspective, right? So talk about their interactional style of verbal and nonverbal communication, because they may have some quirks that they do that they are kind of putting forth in supervision that you may have to talk about, or they may be interpreting their supervisees or students kinds of quirks in ways of interacting verbal, non verbal, that is not productive, right? That is not productive. So you got to talk to them about how they communicate verbally and non-verbally, right? How they interact verbally and non-verbally, and then how they are taking that to their clients, right? Are they taking that and putting it on clients? One of the things that always happens when you kind of doing a mental status exam, when you're doing that, you got to be careful how you write up notes, right? You got to be careful when you say things like, person didn't give us eye contact. Culturally, sometimes that is a problem. We have to be careful with that. Person got really loud in the session. Okay, some people just communicate differently. A person appeared to be angry during this session. Be careful, because culturally things are different for other folks, right? So be careful with that. The client may drink a lot, and you're like, oh, clearly this person drinks a lot. Well, culturally, it might have been acceptable to drink. I do a lot of addictions counseling. I do a lot of marriage counseling, right? Those are my two big areas: addictions sex addictions, as well as chemical addictions and marriage counseling. I do a lot of that, right? So we talk about cultures all the time. We talk about you're bringing this culture into your marriage. We also talk about the subculture, the underground culture of addictions, right? Because it's a whole nother culture. You have your culture of your original culture, and then you have this subculture that you love, which is an addiction culture, whether it be porn or sex or cocaine or alcohol. There's a subculture. So we're going to talk about those type of things too. So fun stuff, guys. Fun stuff to talk about and go through with your supervisees. This is just a model to kind of get you there, but you have to want to get there. You have to want to get there. So develop operational strategies and procedures for accomplishing their expectation and goals, right? So you want to go through that, help them develop strategies and procedures. And again, they have to be culturally responsive, right? It's very easy for me to say with my chemical addicted client, you need to stop smoking weed, right? It's very easy for me to say that. You got to stop smoking weed. Well, it's really hard to stop smoking weed when everybody smokes weed. Like the whole community inside the household and outside the household stop smoking weed. It's a lot different. Some people don't think weed's a problem, right? So that's when you kind of get into some of these cultural things here. And that makes you get an understanding of people and people's values and beliefs. And then you have to check yourself and see, is this your issue or is this your client's issue? You know how many addicts that come to me and say, I'm not interested in quitting using cocaine. I'm coming here because I got in trouble, right? So I'm like, what? So I got in trouble. So I'm trying to figure out, how to get out of this trouble I'm in, but I'm not trying to quit. That's their values and their beliefs. There's nothing wrong with a little cocaine. It's fine. I know it's illegal, but I'm cool with it. What do you do with that? What we do with that is you move forward. And you talk to them about, you can sit back and try to talk to them about the badness of drugs. And listen, guys, that's not your job. That is not your job. Your job is to understand them from a cultural perspective. Your understanding is to help them where they need to be helped. And I know this is counterintuitive for you because you guys would fight back to me if you were in front of me and say, yeah, but don't we need to, what this, and their treatment plan says they have problems with their families. Listen, if they're not ready, they're not ready. Your job is to understand them from a values, beliefs, cultures perspective. That's your job. You can challenge them. But when you are acting like their probation officer and their mother or their father, then you're not being a therapist. You got me? Okay. And develop a particular perspective in seeking to fulfill perceived physical, mental, spiritual, and environmental needs, right? We need to develop a perspective of needs, right? So what are the needs? I work at a faith-based institution. We talk a lot about spirituality and faith. I was at the University of Connecticut, University of Florida. We never talked about spirituality and faith. I think it's criminal not to talk about spirituality and faith. It's unprofessional to push it. It's unprofessional and unethical to have this idea of what they should be doing and not doing, unethical to do those things, but it's also unethical not to talk about these things, right? So don't be afraid to talk to people about their spiritual background. Don't be afraid to talk about things like like how they see the world. Talk about when they have these existential crises, that's when you talk about spirituality. Tell me about life or death. What happens after you die? What do you believe about God or the world or higher powers? What are your beliefs about that? If you're not talking about those things, then you're losing clients. Because just like ethnicity, when you don't talk about it, just like sexual orientation, when you don't talk about it, if that's an issue for me, or if that's who I am, and you're not talking about it, we're not connected. I know. I know that you're not comfortable talking about bisexual relationships. You don't believe in them. And I'm like, wow, okay. I can't connect with this person. There's only so far I can get with this person. There's only so far I can go with it because they don't talk about it. I'm a black male. And at no point are you going to talk about, what's it like being a black male at this institution when you are 2% of all the black males in this company, right? Company of 50,000, 10, 5,000, I'll say 5,000. And you are one of four, and you're trying and you're struggling. And you never talk about my worldview about being a black male. You never talk about what's it like to be a woman only in a place where there's a glass ceiling. You don't even believe in a glass ceiling. You don't talk about the rainbow ceiling for some of my our gay clients who are gay and trying to move up, and then they're feeling as though that people are discriminating against them because they are. You don't talk about those things, or you only talk about them when they bring them up. You have to be prepared to talk about it. Your students have to be prepared to talk about it, right? So this is the hard part, is that you're doing both ends of this work, your own work, and then you're trying to teach students how to do their work. And then you have to continue to grow after the classes. Love it, love it, love it, guys. This is fun to me. I like this. You need to get to like this. I like not knowing, right? I like not knowing. I work in addictions. I'm not a recovering person. I've always worked in addictions. I'm not in recovery. So I had to learn and learn and learn and learn and learn all throughout. That makes it exciting to me, right? That makes it exciting to me. I'm a male. I don't know what it feels like to be a woman. I'm heterosexual. I don't know how it feels like to be a gay man, right? I don't know how it feels like. So when you guys really commit to, I don't know how it feels like, but I'm committed to understanding it. I'm committed to understanding it. That's when you're really doing your thing. So what you want to bring into your multicultural supervision, you want to talk about multicultural assessments. Talk about it. Encourage your supervisees, your students, to look into these things. And not just to talk about things like what was it normed on and those type of things. You got to talk about those, right? The validity of it, the norming of it. We're going to talk about that stuff. But what you really want to talk about, okay, what you really want to talk about is I need you to actually do one. Not to talk about it. I need you to do one with someone. And it just doesn't have to be people of color. It can be people, the majority population in the communities can do it too. These multicultural assessments and case studies are not just for the people of color. Okay, in order for us to make headway in these areas, everybody has to be doing this. Everybody has to be addressing these things. Everybody has to be challenged in these areas, right? Everybody has to talk about the racial identity development of different populations. And white people have racial identity development also. Don't assume that they don't, and don't assume that it is not a culture and we don't have to talk about it. There's nothing more frustrating than being a white person in one of these classes And no one acknowledges that they too have values and beliefs and culture. They too have an identity that they're forming, right? There's nothing worse than that. Have multicultural case studies, right? You got to make sure you do that. Make sure you have treatment plans that address multicultural topics. Make sure, sometimes I'll do a treatment plan for a white male, and I'll do one for a gay Latinx woman, right? And I'm going to talk about, and then I'll put in social economic stuff in here, and I'll put in family of origin issues, and I'll make it a little muddy, right? I'll make it a little complex, and then I'll say, okay, we have same people, same presenting problems, different cultural backgrounds, different sexual orientation, different everything. Now I need a treatment plan for both of them, and they should be different. They should be entirely different. And they should address some of these things. All of you guys should be familiar and work towards AMCD multicultural competencies. You need to know what the competencies are, and it's just not about ethnicities, folks. It's not about ethnicity. It's comprehensive, and you need to understand that, right? It refers to extent to which supervisors possess awareness of their attitudes towards diversity, knowledge of multicultural issues, and skills to work with diverse populations. So there are so many different things that this is talking about. Attitudes, knowledge, and skills, right? But what you're talking about right now is you're talking about teaching it. You're helping people to clinically address it. You are doing it yourself also. So real fun stuff. Okay. So I don't have a lot of time here. I was told to do about 10 or 15 minutes. So I'm going to try to stay to the 10 or 15 minutes here. But I do have a homework assignment for you. I have a video here. It's a wonderful video. And if you know it, don't ruin it. Okay. Don't ruin it for other people. It's called The Lunch Date. And I want you to go through it. And for your professor, I want you to stop it a couple of times and say, what are you seeing? What are you noticing? What's going on? And then go a little bit more. Say, what are you seeing? What's going on? Love it, love it, love it. Go through it. And then talk about what you saw, what you didn't see, what you were thinking all throughout it. What did you learn about yourselves? Okay. And discuss it with other folks. Okay. Next thing I want you to do is read and discuss the Multicultural Supervision article that really talks about this model, the vision model. I want you to talk about that, and then the third thing is you got to get into, and I'm sure you're doing it in class, you got to get into the multicultural competencies and dig into the competencies. And I would also, I know at my school, because again, we're a different school, we're spiritual and faith-based. So what we do is we go into AMC, the ACA competencies, multicultural competencies, and then we might go into AACC, which is a Christian organization, their competencies, and we may see the differences between the two. So what you may do is look at the AMCD, ACA competencies, and then look at APA competencies, and see if you notices any differences, right, between the two. It's a wonderful, wonderful discussion board or homework reflection paper to kind of go to for you professors. So here is the lunch date, and there's a lot of these lunch dates have been made over, but I want you to go to this old black and white one. This is really old black and white, and it has no sound to it. I'm not going to go through it. It's about 10 minutes. You probably can cue it up at like 7 minutes as soon as she gets to the restaurant. Okay? So, listen, it's been my pleasure to talk to you all. My pleasure to sit with you. Would love to talk to you more about multicultural in general. I do a lot of work in different areas. Love to do it. Love what you're doing for our profession. We need some helpers. We need you guys to work hard. We need you guys to put forth this diversity plan. We need you to take this next step with us. Okay? So, blessings to you and your family and all that you do. And it was my pleasure to talk to you. Take good care.